conventional barbed wire fence that we'll end up replacing eventually with high tensile electric, but for right now, these braces are still pretty sturdy. The fence is in good shape, maybe needs a couple of staples, but we've got electric fencing coming down over here, and we want to carry it down to another field that's down below here. So we're going to kind of get two birds with one stone here, and we're going to add a single high tensile electric wire on offset insulators to this existing barbed wire fence. This is going to do a couple things for us. This is going to take our electricity, our hot wire, down around this corner and further down. And there's other places on the ranch where we've taken our hot wire down thousands of feet to where we have more high tensile electric, new fences built, but we're feeding it with an offset wire on existing barbed wire fences. The other thing it's going to do for us is it's going to really extend the life of this fence, because once there's a hot wire on here, cattle are no longer going to be sticking their heads through it, rubbing and scratching on it. They're going to stay away from the fence now with this hot wire on it, and that's going to extend the life of this older barbed wire fence a few extra years. So let's get into it. In this location, we're going to use a pre-made ratchet strainer and insulator assembly with a cable on it. And this is more expensive than just tying an insulator on or using an inline strainer, but it's all in one, it's super quick and easy, and all we've got to do is put this loop around the fence post, feed the ratchet strainer through the loop, and we're done. This is insulated for a hot wire, and it has a ratchet strainer that we can tension with a strainer handle. And the reason I'm using this here is because it's quick and easy, and because I'm not going to have this wire on here forever. It's just a temporary thing until I get around to replacing this fence. So when I do take this down, it's going to be easy to pull this off and move it and use it somewhere else. So I oftentimes like to use these on fences that are going to come down in just a few years. So we've already run out our hot wire all the way down to the next brace down below. And we're going to do that before we bother installing any of the insulators. We just pulled the line down there. We tied it off to an insulator on the other side. So now I've got plenty of slack in this line, so I can get the amount that I need to get into my strainer here, and then I can cut this off. So what I'll do is I'll get it far enough out that I can step on it. So I've got that side protected from movement. And then I'm going to hold this side with my hand, and I'm going to cut it in between. Always make sure you've got both ends of it secured so that the wire doesn't fling out, fly off, or endanger you. Feed that end back up through so it stays where it's supposed to. Now, I do have a bit of a dip down there, so I'm not going to tighten this too much because I don't want to pull the wire way up into the air. But I'm going to feed this wire right through the hole in my strainer. I'm going to take out some of the slack here, and then I'm just going to take a couple of turns with my strainer handle so it stays put, and I'm going to wait until I get my insulators in before I make any final tension on this fence. Just going to get it tightened just enough to hold it on there for now. Okay, so the first post we've come to is an outside corner, and I could use one of these standoff insulators, but it would put quite a bit of force onto it, and it'd be pulling back on this plastic portion right here. So I've chosen to use a different type of insulator here. I'm going to use these screw-in type insulators. And with these, the steel of the screw comes through this plastic overmolding and underneath all the way up to the middle here. So if you have some force pulling down on it, or if you put it upside down with the opening down and you have force pulling up on it or force pulling back into it, these are pretty strong insulators. So this is going to be a little closer to the fence than my other standoffs, but I think it's going to work just fine. And I'm going to take it through two of these ring insulators. Those are going to be installed with a tool that's specific for it that mounts on my cordless drill. You just slide the insulator in right there like that. And I'm going to use my marker stick to choose my wire height here again. And I'm just going to use 2 to make sure that the wire stays away from the barbed wire parts of the fence as it comes around that corner. On this particular insulator, when you're screwing it in, it has sort of a pointy part of that body, and that's opposite from the opening, so you can tell when you've got it oriented correctly. As we go, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure the hot wire is untangled from the barbed wire, and I'm going to pop that wire into those two insulators, and you can see that'll keep it away from the post. So now we've come down to the first wood post where we want to use a standoff insulator. And these come in different lengths depending on the type of fence you're working with and how far away you need the hot wire to be. But you just want to make sure to keep that hot wire far away from the barbed wire so it doesn't get tangled up and start shorting out, and so that it doesn't electrify the barbed wire, because electrified barbed wire can be pretty dangerous. An animal can get caught in it, and if they're both tangled in the barbed wire and being shocked, that could be fatal, right? So we're going to keep it as far away as we can. I chose my wire height using my same stick. I'm choosing one of my normal hot wire locations, but I also am kind of picking to be sort of in between a couple of the barbed wires, just to keep it that little bit further away. So for these, they can be driven in with a hammer, but they're pretty large. It's a pretty large spike size, so I like to pre-drill them with a bit that's a little bit smaller in diameter than the spike itself. And once you have installed it, this L part is going to be down. So think about that when you consider the final wire height. Your hole is actually going to be lower, not where your mark is at, to get the insulator at the right height. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill this. It should be deep enough. And then we can put this into that hole we drilled and just drive it in. And it'll be snug, but you should be able to get it in there no problem. If not, maybe choose a little bit larger drill bit. And what you'll find is if you're putting in all your insulators and then you're going to put in your wire, you will want them sideways until the wire is installed. If your wire is a little bit tighter, having the insulator sideways, this way actually with the opening on top, makes it really easy to slide the wire in and then rotate this up. If you have it in this upright position, you can install the wire, but you need quite a bit of slack in the wire in order to get it into the insulator. So if you install them sideways with the opening up, then you can put the wire in even if it's under tension. And if you need to remove the wire while this is in service, then you just need to rotate it to that sideways position. So once we put the wire in, to finish the installation, we're going to turn this to the vertical position and then grab yourself a 2-inch staple and staple right across that part of the vertical part of the spike. And that's going to keep it from rotating and keep the wire from falling out. Just drive that staple right in over top of the vertical part of the spike, and that'll keep this insulator from rotating or from pulling out, make for a really strong installation. We're going to add another insulator on this post here, and we've skipped one in between. You don't need to put these insulators on every single post. You just want to look down the fence line, make sure you put them on any posts that are standing out toward the hot wire from the rest of the fence, and then you can just put them at a reasonable distance apart to keep the hot wire at the right height off the ground. They certainly don't need to be at every single post. All right, so we got the standoff insulators installed down the rest of this fence line, and we're ready to strain this up. So we're going to go ahead and tension this up. We're not going to tighten it as much as we would on a purpose-built high-tensile fence, because we don't know exactly what the quality of the braces at the corners and everything like that are, but we're just going to take the slack out of it so that the wire stays at the correct height. And it stays away from the barbed wire. That's probably about all we need. You can also see that I felt that it was, the wire was too close to this would stay right here. So I just added one of those insulators, a screw-in insulator right there as well. And then the last step for this fence, because there's a gate right here, I'm gonna go ahead and put a warning sign on here. This particular type of warning sign just clips down over the wire. And then a neat trick I learned from Tim Thompson on YouTube is that if you have a typical bolt style wire clamp for these, it's meant to go perfectly through this hole, and then the part that clamps over the wire is in the perfect position to clamp right onto the wire and hold the sign in place. And this is important because I have had these signs blow back and forth on the wire, and I like to use these signs, warning signs, anywhere where we have an irrigation hydrant close to the fence to remind the irrigator not to touch it. So the fact that it'll stay put, once I tension it down, it'll stay in position. It's not gonna slide back and forth in the wind, and it's gonna stay where you want it as a warning. So that's a good little feature to know about. So there you have it. Now we've got our hot wire on this existing barbed wire fence. We're carrying our electricity down to the next brace so that we can tie back into it with another new fence there, and it'll keep livestock away from this fence, extending the life of the fence as well.